Welcome to Global Weekly News, serial number 46. Comrades and friends, let us go to Cuba to see May Day celebrations there. The slogan of this year's May Day in Cuba was Hands and Hearts for the Homeland. It reflects the urgent need for every Cuban to contribute all their abilities to overcome any challenge. This year's May Day celebration in Cuba was interrupted by severe storms that knocked out electricity in much of the country. May Day was celebrated along with Karl Marx's 205th birth anniversary on 5th May. 150 American youth from nearly 30 states and dozens of organizations was brought together by the International People's Assembly, a network of left movements and parties around the globe. The US youth had wide-ranging discussion with Cuban youth on the significance of Cuban Revolution and the difficulties faced by Cuba due to prolonged US sanctions on Cuba. The discussions inspired the US youth to further strengthen the struggle against the blockade back in US. The US imposed blockade has been in effect for over 6 decades, but a series of developments in the past several years has taken its cruelty to new heights. Coercive measures on Cuba magnified the crisis due to COVID-19 dramatically in Cuba. Cuba was able to avoid the kind of catastrophic loss of life experienced in US thanks to Cuba's world-renowned health system that produced 5 different vaccines, but the economic consequences were grave. Tourism is a principal source of foreign currency for Cuba, essential to import vital goods, but this industry disappeared due to COVID-19. Donald Trump imposed 243 new measures over the course of the Trump administration. The smoothening of US Cuba relations that took place at the end of the Obama years was completely reversed. At the end of the term of Trump, the US labeled Cuba a state sponsoring terrorism because Cuba had hosted successful peace talks between the Colombian government and ELN, that is the National Rebel Army groups. Colombia's president was celebrated for his efforts with a Nobel Peace Prize, but Cuba was prevented from further potential trading partners. On August 2022, a lightning strike sparked a fire that exploded one of the Matanzas fuel storage facilities' massive tanks and then spread to 3 more. 14 firefighters unfortunately tragically died. Severe fuel shortages followed, which persists to this day. On 27th September 2022, Hurricane Ian destroyed over 50,000 homes in the western province of Cuba. Construction materials desperately needed for reconstruction efforts could not be imported due to economic seize of the island. Ian also had a profound effect on agriculture. Despite traveling as part of a licensed, completely legal trip, members of US Youth Brigade were harassed at the Miami and New York airports. Hands up Cuba! Down with US sanctions on Cuba! Remove Cuba from list of countries sponsoring terrorism. Comrades and friends, we are going to see the World Press Freedom Day. A group of African journalists released a declaration in Windhoek of Namibia on 3rd May 1991. Similar declarations were also released later on in Santiago of Chile, Sanaa of Syria, and Alma-Ata of Kazakhstan. Windhoek Declaration emphasized that there shall not be monopolies in press and unionization of journalists with due legal and political recognition. On 3rd May, progressive groups marked World Press Freedom Day by drawing attention to the continued torture of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange. In a panel discussion held by the Tricontinental Institute for Social Research in collaboration with International People's Assembly and People's Dispatch, senior independent journalists spoke on why Assange continues to be punished and imprisoned for his reporting. The panel consists of Indian civil rights activist and journalist Teesta Setalvad and senior journalist Prabir Purkayastha. Teesta Setalvad is renowned for her more than 2 decades long struggle to secure justice for the victims of the 2002 sectarian violence in Gujarat. Setalvad said that there is need to talk about how capitalism is affecting journalism and journalists everywhere. Purkayastha has worked for decades not only as an independent journalist but also as a prominent figure in India's People's Science Movement, peace and anti-imperialist movements, and also for founding the progressive online media platform NewsClick in 2009. Purkayastha said that the particular media, particularly those organizations like The Guardian and the New York Times, who benefited from Assange's journalism and later abandoned him, saying he is not a journalist, would at least now show the courage. The panel chose to highlight Assange as he continues to remain imprisoned without any charges in a high security prison in Belmarsh of London, awaiting a final verdict on his extradition to US. If extradited, Assange will face multiple charges of espionage and computer hacking. The charges carry a combined maximum prison sentence of 175 years. Julian Assange should be applauded for his exposure of US war crimes in Iraq and Afghanistan through his WikiLeaks media. Comrades, let us see what is happening in Uruguay. Retirement age is increased to 65 years from 60 years through a bill in the Senate of Uruguay in December 2022 and was passed in the Senate. And this bill has to get approval of the lower house of the parliament. The trade unions and the workers of Uruguay are very much against this pension reform. We have already highlighted how in France 12 national strikes took place against the pension retirement age enhancement to 64 years by Emmanuel Macron. Comrades, let us see the People's Health Assembly. People's Health Assembly first met in Bangladesh in 2020. Health for all and new global economic order were emphasized in this assembly. 20 years after now, in December 2023, People's Health Assembly is going to meet in Cali of Colombia for the 5th time. People's Health Movement is making arrangements for this assembly. Along with People's Health Assembly, People's Health Tribunal will also meet and inquire the violations of multinational corporates of health rights. Last People's Health Assembly met in Bangladesh in 2018. People's Health Assembly 5 will discuss on the dangers of health rights and struggle for such rights. Since this assembly is going to meet in Colombia, the Latin American countries are showing much interest. The new left progressive governments which have emerged in Latin America are strengthening public health systems. Comrades and friends, fifthly, we are going to see a new vaccine invented for malaria eradication, and that vaccine approved in Ghana of Africa. Globally, every year, 620,000 people die due to malaria. Oxford University, Jenner Institute of England, invented R21 matrix vaccine for malaria. Trial on 5,000 children was conducted by vaccinating them with R21 vaccine. In Burkina Faso of Africa, it was found that the vaccine is 80% effective after 3 doses and a year later a booster dose. Ghana, African country, Food and Drug Authority has approved R21 vaccine for vaccinating children between 5 months and 3 years of age. Other African countries and World Health Organizations are also conducting studies. Serum Institute of India will set up a factory in Accra of Ghana and produce 10 to 20 crore doses of R21 matrix vaccine. R21 single dose will be available for a couple of dollars. Adar Poonawale, Chief Executive Officer of Serum Institute, said that Ghana approving R21 vaccine is an important milestone in the fight against malaria globally. The previous malaria vaccine are evolved by corporates, but the present R21 matrix vaccine was invented after a lot of public research by the government. Sixthly, we are going to see Brazil. Lula da Silva, Workers' Party leader, was sworn in as President of South American country Brazil on 1st January 2023. But in the parliament, the rightist forces unfortunately are in a majority. Due to the efforts of the rightist MPs, Parliamentary Inquiry Commission was set up to probe the activities of MST, that is Landless Workers Movement of Brazil. The motive of the commission is to destabilize Lula government and agricultural reform. MST was very much part of the election campaign for Lula. MST very much supported Lula. The inquiry commission will be used to divert the focus on illegal activities of agribusiness. In fact, the inquiry commission should have been set up against the landlords and agribusiness, because these vested interests destroy the Amazon forests. They occupy the lands of the indigenous people. They occupy the lands of Afro-Brazil communities. They use lot of pesticide. A section of right-wing congressmen and their supporters kept making false allegations that the MST lived off public money. However, the MST movement came out stronger after more than 6 years under the governments of Michel Temer and Jair Bolsonaro. MST movement leaders also travelled with President Lula to China this month. An agreement had been signed in 2022 to obtain machinery for small farmers in Brazil. It was agreed that Chinese companies will send about 50 pieces agricultural machinery for small properties. It is expected that the machinery will arrive in August and September. And after that, there will be a period of testing. The next step is the creation of companies with the Brazilian and Chinese capital to manufacture in Brazil the machines that prove to be most useful. With a little tractor, it will be able to weed out and eliminate the herbicide. Comrades, let us see the miseries of Afghanistan due to Taliban rule out there. Afghanistan was occupied by United States of America for 20 years. US did nothing for the development of Afghanistan. Now Muslim fundamentalists, Taliban took over power. International aid to Afghanistan since the Taliban took over power is very much reduced. The Afghanistan Socio-Economic Outlook 2023 report released by the United Nations Development Programme on 18th April highlights the impact of cuts in international aid to Afghanistan. 3.4 crores of Afghanistans are in need of humanitarian assistance. The number of people below the poverty line in Afghanistan has increased from 1.9 crore in 2020 to 3.4 crore today. Even if the United Nations aid appeal for international assistance to reach $460 crore in 2023 succeeds, it may fall short of what is needed to improve conditions for crores of Afghanistan people. United Nations is reviewing its pressure. United Nations is reviewing its presence in Afghanistan following the Taliban's ban on Afghan women to work for UN earlier this month. The United Nations statement suggested that it may be planning to suspend its operations in the country. UN report also notes that Afghanistan is currently facing a severe fiscal crisis and a near collapse in its banking system due to lack of foreign assistance that previously accounted for almost 70% of the government's budget. After Taliban takeover, US announced that it had frozen $950 crore of Afghanistan central bank reserves. The European Union also followed suit, suspending $144 crore in development assistance. United Nations Development Program report says that the economy cannot be reignited if women cannot work, while future economic growth is constrained by underinvestment in girls' and women's education. Lastly, we are going to see how much cruelty is taking place in the so-called democratic country, United States of America. How racism is still there, very much alive in USA. Black homeless man murdered by white vigilante. A black homeless man, 21-year-old Jordan Neely, was murdered on 1st May by a white vigilante in the New York City subway system. I don't have food, I don't have a drink, I am fed up, were some of his last words before dying. Jordan Neely was saying to the rail passengers, I don't mind going to jail and getting life in prison. I am ready to die. A US Marine veteran putting Jordan Neely in a chokehold that lasted 15 minutes, ending in his death. New York Police Department, after questioning the murderer, let him free. A freelance journalist witnessed the killing and took a 4-minute video of Neely's final moments. The murder prompted outrage throughout New York City, which quickly spread across the country. On 3rd May, 50 people demonstrated in the railway platform. Neely used to impersonate Michael Jackson. Neely used to go around the subway system, dancing and entertaining the passengers. New York City administration wants the city to be a playground for the rich people. They don't want to see the homeless. Is it not hypocrisy on US jumping from earth to heaven and as protector of democracy, while racism is revealed in various forms in US now and often? Thank you, comrades. See you next week. Lal Salam.